Sophie, Countess of Wessex and Prince Edward joined other senior members of the royal family at Westminster Hall on Wednesday. The Earl and Countess of Wessex have taken on more prominent roles within the royal family in recent months, with their status in the firm being made evident by their public presence as the nation mourns. When Princess Anne, the Queen's only daughter, dropped to a deep curtsy as her mother's coffin was carried into St. Giles Cathedral on Monday, it was Sophie who outstretched her arm to show her support for her sister-in-law. Sophie had grown particularly close to the late monarch, and it is said she was treated like a second daughter. She and Edward live in Bagshot Park, just a short drive away from Windsor Castle, where the Queen resided for the final months of her life. The Countess was the first member of the royal family to speak publicly about the death of Prince Philip, signalling that Sophie has become trusted as a safe pair of hands within the firm. Sophie and Edward's prominence was escalated following the shock exit of Meghan Markle and Prince Harry in 2020. Ahead of their stepping down and move to the US, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex were set to become a powerful force in a modernizing monarchy. Now, with Meghan and Harry spending most of their time across the pond, the Earl and Countess of Wessex have stepped up, working alongside Prince William and Kate, Princess of Wales, as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex were expected to do. Read more. Teary-eyed King Charles III thanks huge crowd at Buckingham Palace after proclamation. Sophie and Wessex will take on the Sussexes' role under Charles' kingship. Image, Getty Images. The royal family came together to mourn the Queen's death. Image, Getty Images. Sophie Wessex becoming confidant to Kate as she takes new role. Sophie Wessex has become something of a confidant for Kate as she steps up to the role of Princess of Wales, sources claim. King Charles III's royal ascension to the throne after his mother the Queen's death has led to new roles for others in the royal family. How will roles change in the royal family? Find out here. It is understood that Meghan and Harry were set to play an important role under the reign of King Charles III, and now, a royal commentator has claimed Sophie and Edward will assume those duties. Brittany Barger, editor at Royal Central, told Express.co.uk, "We've seen Sophie and Edward take on more responsibilities, and this is likely to continue under Charles as king. With Prince Harry and Meghan Markle in the US, it is likely that Sophie and Edward will step up to take on their roles that Charles had planned for the Sussexes before they decided to step down from their duties." As we know, Meghan and Harry were going to be very involved in the royal family, with both of them to continue as senior working royals. Harry is Charles' son, so he was expected to work alongside his father and brother. Harry, Meghan, William and Kate were all working together before they split households and the Sussexes' exit, so it was likely they would have been Charles' slimmed-down monarchy had the Duke and Duchess of Sussex not left. The Fab Four were set to be the future of the monarchy. Image, Getty Images. Meghan and Harry relinquished their HRH titles and no longer represented the Queen when they stepped down from the firm. They have since carved out separate lives in the US, where the couple have signed commercial deals and pursued their own interests. Ahead of the Queen's death, Harry and Meghan returned to the UK for a series of charity events. They were due to attend an event in London when news of the Queen's ailing health came to light. Harry travelled to Balmoral Castle to be with his grandmother, but the monarch died a few hours before his arrival. The Sussexes have stayed in the UK and are expected to attend the monarch's funeral on Monday. They stood alongside other members of the royal family at Westminster Hall following a procession from Buckingham Palace, in which Harry took part. It comes after King Charles mentioned the Sussexes in his first TV broadcast as monarch on Friday. He said, "I want also to express my love for Harry and Meghan as they continue to build their lives overseas." Harry and Meghan stood alongside the UK-based royals. Image, Getty Images. Sophie and Edward will continue to gain prominence under Charles' kingship. Image, Getty Images. Trending. It has been said that Charles may be more open to welcoming Harry and Meghan back into the fold than the Queen was. Speaking on last week's episode of the Daily Mirror's Pod Save the Queen podcast, Ken Wharf, a former police protection officer who worked with Harry and William when they were boys, said he didn't believe Harry would see out his days in California. When asked if the pair would ever come back to the UK, Mr. Wharf, who has written a new book called Diana, Remembering the Princess, said, "Personally I do, and I base that on gut reaction really. I just cannot see them forevermore living in California. It's clear to me that Harry is not quite a fish out of sea. I mean, he is getting involved in charitable work and he has these attachments to Netflix and other companies, but quite where they'll end up we don't know. But I just think his involvement with his military charities, quite how he runs that on the other side of the Atlantic, I don't know. But I just have this feeling that he could well be back in a new role, with or without Meghan. I honestly don't know. I do think he will be back in some form as part of his father's plan for trimming down the monarchy, because within the next decade that is going to happen. Don't miss, Andrew looks set to take on Queen's beloved dogs after monarch's death. Reveal Queen's poignant last moments with Charles and Anne by her side. Insight inside Buckingham Palace. Glimpse inside Queen Elizabeth II's home. Analysis. Meghan and Harry returned to Europe earlier this month. Image, Getty Images. Dina Brown, author of the Palace Papers, agreed with Mr. Wharf when she spoke to the Royally Obsessed podcast earlier this year. She said, "My guess is Charles is really going to want them back. Sort of need them back, actually, because Harry and Meghan were huge assets to the whole royal repertoire, quite frankly. They had a young appeal that was very, very potent in the country." However, Christopher Anderson, another author and expert, claimed Meghan and Harry don't seem ready to return. Following the Sussexes' joint walkabout with the Prince and Princess of Wales, he told Us Weekly, "I just think that Harry and Meghan still are uneasy. We've seen that in a recent interview that Meghan gave, so it'll take an awful lot, I think, for those to get things back to where they were, and it's all sad." Here, Mr. Anderson referred to Meghan's bombshell interview with US magazine The Cut, during which she suggested her and Harry's relationship with the UK-based royals remained difficult. All you need to know about the Queen's funeral. Key moments. Queen Elizabeth II's state funeral will take place on Monday, September 19 at Westminster Abbey at 11 a.m. Following the state funeral, the coffin will undertake a procession from Westminster Abbey to Wellington Arch, and then on to Windsor. Once at Windsor, the state hearse will undertake a procession to St George's Chapel, Windsor Castle via the Long Walk. A committal service will then take place in St George's Chapel, with the Queen laid to rest at the King George VI Memorial Chapel. Will it be televised? The Queen's funeral service will be televised across BBC One, BBC News, and on BBC iPlayer. Sky News will also broadcast the funeral on its TV channel, Freeview, the Sky News app and via YouTube. Nonetheless, in the wake of the death of Queen Elizabeth, the reportedly rifting royals have come together to commemorate the life and legacy of their family's matriarch. And whether Harry and Meghan carve out new roles under Charles' kingship or not, Sophie and Edward are set to become more significant members within the royal fold. It has been reported that both the Earl and Countess of Wessex could be given new titles in the near future. Perhaps in a final nod to her much-loved daughter-in-law, the Queen's title of the Duchess of Edinburgh will pass to the Countess of Wessex if, as expected, Edward succeeds his father as the Duke of Edinburgh. This move would further elevate Sophie's status within the royal family when her role continues to acquire more significance as one of just a handful of working royals in Charles' slimmed-down monarchy. Currently, King Charles holds the Duke of Edinburgh title and has done so since Philip's death last year. Philip made his wishes clear that his youngest son, who worked closely with the late Prince on his Duke of Edinburgh scheme, should be given the title. Both Sophie and Edward shared close relationships with the late Duke of Edinburgh. By taking on the titles, Sophie and Edward will raise their